A YouTuber from Britain just became the most controversial figure in the supercar world, not because of what he built, but because of who he angered while building it. Mate Armstrong has rebuilt Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and Aston Martins, taking cars that manufacturers declared dead and bringing them back from the grave. Millions of people tune in every week to watch him do the impossible. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared the car community for what happened when he caught the attention of one of the most powerful automotive empires on the planet, Bugatti. Not just Bugatti the company, not just their PR department, but the CEO himself, Mate Rimac, one of the most influential men in the entire automotive industry. A billionaire engineer who once built his own electric hypercar from scratch, who now controls the Bugatti brand, and who clearly was not going to sit back and watch Mate Armstrong dismantle everything Bugatti stands for, one boat at a time, and broadcast it to 6.5 million subscribers. What started as a YouTube rebuild project became a public war of words that escalated into legal threats. And the question the car community is now screaming is simple. Does a man who legally buys a car have the right to take it apart, rebuild it, and show the world how he did it? Buckle up, because this story is about to go somewhere nobody expected. Before we get into the courtroom drama, you need to understand exactly who Mate Armstrong is, and why what he does terrifies manufacturers at the highest levels. Mate Armstrong is a British YouTuber with over 6.5 million subscribers, and he has built his entire identity around one very specific mission: rescuing crashed, written-off supercars that everyone else has abandoned, not fixing a scratch bumper or replacing a flat tire. We're talking about cars that insurance companies have declared total losses, cars that even the original factories say cannot be repaired, cars that professional mechanics take one look at and walk away from. Mate sees those cars differently. Where everyone else sees the end of the road, he sees the starting line. His resume reads like a highlight reel of impossible. He rebuilt a Porsche GT3 RS after a devastating crash. He brought back a Lamborghini Aventador SVJ that had been obliterated. He rescued an Aston Martin DBX that had been completely submerged underwater, waterlogged, rusted, written off, and made it drive again. He rebuilt a Ferrari 812 Superfast from a bare wrecked shell and then, in one of the most emotional moments in his channel's history, gifted the finished car to his own father. And most impressively, he took a Lamborghini Revuelto, one of the most electronically complex hypercars ever manufactured, and rebuilt it like it had just rolled off the factory floor. The man doesn't just fix cars. He humiliates the manufacturer's declarations of impossibility. He turns their "this cannot be done" into a viral video with 10 million views. So when Mate Armstrong announced he had purchased a wrecked Bugatti Chiron, arguably the most technologically advanced hypercar on Earth, did anyone really think this was an end quietly? The Bugatti Chiron isn't just expensive, starting at well over $3 million. It is an engineering monument, a 16-cylinder quad-turbocharged engine producing 1,500 horsepower, carbon fiber everywhere. Electronics are so sophisticated they took hundreds of years to develop. This is not a car. It is a rolling statement of what human engineering is capable of. And someone had crashed one. The specific car Mate bought had been involved in a serious accident. The damage was extensive, the repair estimate astronomical, and the official verdict from Bugatti's own network was that the car was finished, written off, beyond saving. Mate Armstrong heard that verdict and did what he always does. He bought it anyway. The Chiron rebuild became one of the most watched automotive series on YouTube. Millions of subscribers followed every episode with an almost obsessive level of engagement because this wasn't just a car project anymore. It was a statement. Could one man in his own workshop with his own team rebuild the most sophisticated production car ever made? Episode by episode, the answer seemed to be yes. Mate sourced parts from wherever he could. He reverse-engineered systems that had no publicly available documentation. He worked around components that were supposed to be available only through official Bugatti dealerships. He brought in specialists, called in favors, and spent enormous sums of money to get the car back into a condition that frankly stunned everyone watching. But here's where things get complicated, and here's where you have to pay close attention, because this is where the whole situation stops being just a car story and starts being something much bigger. Throughout the rebuild, Mate made various claims about the car, its condition, the parts he used, and the process he followed. He documented everything on camera. Millions of people watched. And one of those people watching was not a subscriber. He wasn't a fan. He wasn't cheering from the comment section. He was the CEO of Bugatti, Mate Rimac. And Mate Rimac was not happy. Here is something you need to understand about Mate Rimac before we go any further, because this is not just any corporate executive firing off a stern letter from behind a mahogany desk. Rimac is an engineer. He founded his own company, Rimac Automobile, in his garage at just 21 years old and built it into one of the most respected names in electric hypercar development. His company eventually acquired Bugatti, making him the CEO of one of the most prestigious automotive brands in history. He is technically brilliant, deeply passionate about the cars he builds, and has zero tolerance for misinformation about them. So when Mate Rimac watched the Chiron rebuild series and saw claims he believed to be inaccurate, claims being broadcast to millions of people, claims that in his view misrepresented the car, its systems, and what was or wasn't genuine about the rebuild, he didn't send a cease and desist letter through a lawyer. He went public. Rimac took to social media and personally called out Matt Armstrong. He challenged specific technical claims. He disputed details about the parts used and the authenticity of certain components. He raised questions about the sourcing of Bugatti-branded materials. And he did all of this openly, on his own platforms, with his own massive following. What followed was, to put it plainly, one of the most explosive public confrontations between a manufacturer and an independent builder the car world had ever seen. The car community exploded. Millions of views poured into both sides of the argument. Every automotive YouTube channel, every car podcast, every forum was dissecting the situation minute by minute. Was Matt Armstrong being unfairly targeted? Was Rimac right to raise the concerns he raised? And if so, what exactly had Matt done that was wrong? Ask yourself this. If you legally buy a car, legally repair it, and accurately describe what you did, is anyone allowed to stop you? Is the CEO of the company that made it allowed to publicly drag your name through the mud? And more importantly, what happens when that CEO decides a public battle isn't enough and starts talking about legal action? Let's pause here for a second, because this is where most people outside the car community check out, and they shouldn't, because this moment, a CEO taking to social media to publicly challenge a YouTube creator over how he rebuilt a car, is genuinely historic. Has a CEO of a company that makes $3 million cars ever done that before? Has anyone at that level of the automotive industry ever felt threatened enough by a man with a spanner and a camera to come out swinging publicly? Think about what that tells you about how seriously manufacturers are taking the right to repair movement. They are not laughing it off. They are not ignoring it. They are fighting back. The social media confrontation was damaging enough, but then the situation escalated to a level that nobody in the car community had anticipated. Word spread through automotive circles that Bugatti's legal position was hardening. The dispute was no longer just about hurt feelings and public image. The company was exploring its legal options. Some reports and discussions in the community pointed toward potential Supreme Court level implications, a case that could, if it went all the way, fundamentally redefine the legal relationship between a car manufacturer and someone who buys their product. Think about what that means for a moment. Really think about it. If Bugatti were pursued as to its ultimate legal conclusion and win, it would set a precedent that says a manufacturer retains certain rights over their product even after you've paid for it, even after the title is in your name, even after the car is sitting in your garage. They could potentially argue that their intellectual property, their software, their proprietary systems, and their brand reputation give them authority over what you can and cannot do with a car you legally own. Doesn't that sound familiar? Because if you've been following the ongoing battle between Matt Armstrong and Ferrari over the 296 GTB project, you already know where this road leads. The Ferrari situation is almost a parallel universe version of the same fight. Ferrari refused to supply parts needed for completion. Their hybrid battery management system locked the car in a permanent state where it simply will not start, and only Ferrari's own proprietary software can reset it. A car that someone legally owns, sitting silent in a workshop because the manufacturer holds the digital key and won't turn it. With Bugatti, the battle moved in a different direction. This was about what Matt said, what he showed, and whether his portrayal of the rebuild was accurate enough to satisfy the people who made the car, and crucially, whether the CEO of Bugatti had the legal stand to demand he do anything about it. That is a question the Supreme Court scenario puts on the table. And it is a question that the entire right to repair movement is watching with absolute intensity. Right to repair laws exist in various forms across different countries and different industries. The core principle is straightforward. If you own something, you should have the right to fix it yourself or pay someone else to fix it without being blocked by the original manufacturer. In the United States, right to repair battles have been fought most visibly in the technology sector. Apple famously resisted third-party screen repairs. John Deere locked farmers out of repairing their own tractors with software restrictions that could only be bypassed using official dealer tools. In both cases, the pushback from consumers and regulators was enormous. But the automotive world is now entering the same territory, and the stakes are potentially even higher because the money involved is so much greater. When you buy a smartphone for $1,000 and the manufacturer tells you that only they can replace the battery, that is frustrating. But when you spend $3 million on a Bugatti Chiron or $270,000 on a Ferrari 296 GTB, and the manufacturer tells you that only they can reset the software that makes it run, that is a completely different conversation. As independent mobile mechanic Daniel Preston, who specializes in high-end vehicles, has explained, physically working on modern Ferraris and similar supercars is not actually the difficult part. The real challenge is everything surrounding the car: getting parts, accessing technical documentation, and navigating a system that is deliberately designed to push independent mechanics back toward a manufacturer's own service network. Even with right to repair legislation in place in the UK, Preston has stated that access is not always guaranteed in practice, and that experience maps perfectly onto what Matt Armstrong has encountered at every turn. With Bugatti, he was able to physically rebuild the car. But when the CEO of the company publicly challenges the integrity of what you built, and when legal machinery potentially starts moving the background, the question is no longer just about wrenches and replacement parts. It is about who has the ultimate authority over a product that changes hands. Here is the argument from the manufacturer's side, and it is worth hearing fairly. Bugatti builds perhaps 500 cars per year. Each one is handcrafted. Each one carries their name, their reputation, and their engineering legacy. If a car that was rebuilt outside their system, using parts that may not have been certified, with processes that were never approved, is then presented to the world as a functioning Bugatti, and if anything goes wrong with that car, who is liable? Who pays when someone gets hurt? Who answers for the brand damage? From that perspective, a CEO going public to dispute technical claims isn't just ego. It might be a legal necessity. But here is a counterargument, and it is equally powerful. Matt Armstrong bought the car. He paid for it. He never claimed the rebuild was Bugatti certified. His audience of millions understood exactly what they were watching. An independent build by an enthusiast who documents everything on camera. Nobody in that audience was confused about whether this was an official factory restoration. So the question becomes, does Bugatti's legitimate concern about their brand and their reputation give them the right to silence someone who legally owns their product and chooses to repair it? That is not a simple question, and it may well be one that courts have to answer. When Mate Rimac went public with his challenge to Matt Armstrong, the car community did not respond with a unified voice. It split almost perfectly down the middle. On one side, the hardcore Matt Armstrong loyalists. To them, Matt is a hero. He takes cars that everyone else abandons and gives them a second life. He does it transparently, on camera, for millions to watch. He acknowledges difficulty, admits mistakes, and never pretends a process is something it isn't. These fans saw Rimac's intervention as a billionaire CEO using his platform and power to bully a content creator who was simply doing his job. On the other side, the people who sided with Rimac's technical objections. These were often engineers, mechanics, and serious automotive enthusiasts who felt that rebuilding a Bugatti Chiron and presenting it publicly requires a certain level of accuracy. If claims were made about the car's condition or the authenticity of parts that turned out to be imprecise, then they felt the CEO had every right, even a responsibility, to correct the record publicly. Both positions are reasonable. Both positions are genuinely defensible. And the fact that millions of people hold both of them simultaneously tells you something important about how complicated the situation actually is. And don't think this debate stayed politely online either. The sheer scale of the Chiron rebuild series meant that automotive journalists, legal commentators, and even people with no interest in cars whatsoever stumbled into the argument. When the CEO of Bugatti publicly disputes the claims of a YouTuber, it becomes more than a car story. It becomes a story about power, about who has the right to define what happened when a camera was rolling and millions of people were watching, about whether wealth and corporate prestige can determine the narrative around a legal transaction that had nothing to do with Bugatti's approval. The comment sections on both sides ran into the hundreds of thousands. The debates were heated, informed, uninformed, passionate, and sometimes genuinely illuminating. People who had never heard of Mate Armstrong before found themselves with an opinion on him, and all of it, every comment, every view, every shared video, added fuel to a situation that was already burning hot. But here is what most people on both sides agreed on. The escalation toward legal territory crossed a line that nobody in the car community was comfortable with, because a Bugatti or any manufacturer can successfully use legal action to control how someone documents or repair a car they legally own, then every single independent builder, every salvage title enthusiast, every weekend mechanic who films their work and posts it online has a problem. Not just Mate Armstrong. Everyone. Now, let's bring the Ferrari situation back into focus, because the two stories together reveal something that the car community is increasingly alarmed about. We are not talking about two isolated incidents here. We are talking about a pattern. Two of the most prestigious automotive brands in the world both found themselves in public confrontations with the same independent builder. One CEO went on social media to challenge his claims. One manufacturer supplied parts halfway through a build and then quietly pulled the plug, leaving a half-transformed hypercar stranded in a British workshop. Are these coincidences? Or is this what the future of supercar ownership looks like for anyone who dares step outside the manufacturer's approved ecosystem? With Ferrari and the 296 GTB, Mate Armstrong encountered what can only be described as a manufacturer design paradox. Ferrari said they would only help diagnose the car's electronic problems once the entire car was fully rebuilt to its original specification. But of course, without knowing what the electronic problems were, and without Ferrari's help to reset the hybrid battery management system, the car could not be completed. You cannot fix what you cannot diagnose. You cannot diagnose what you cannot start. And you cannot start what the manufacturer has locked. Ferrari initially supplied some parts, allowed Mate to work in their dealership yard in Cyprus, and seemed to be cooperating. Then, at a critical point in the build, after Mate had already spent enormous sums transforming the wrecked road car into the only road-going version of the 296 Challenge specification in existence, the remaining critical components suddenly became restricted, VIN-locked, unavailable without official authorization that was never going to be granted. The car now sits in Mate's workshop as possibly the most extraordinary non-running vehicle on Earth. Visually, it is indistinguishable from Ferrari's official 296 Challenge race car. Mechanically and electronically, it is completely stranded. And then, almost impossibly, spy photographers near Maranello captured images of a heavily camouflaged Ferrari prototype testing on public roads. Analysts who examined the images reached the same conclusion. The prototype appeared to be a road-legal version of the Ferrari 296 Challenge, the very car that Mate Armstrong had already built in his garage. Ferrari, it appears, had been developing this vehicle the entire time. They were blocking Mate from completing his version. Is that a coincidence? The car community has formed its own opinion on that question, and it is not charitable toward Ferrari. But strip away the conspiracy angle, and you are still left with the same hard structural problem. Manufacturers of modern hybrid and electric supercars hold a level of post-sale control over their products that has no historical precedent. Once, you could buy a Ferrari, take it to any qualified mechanic, get it fixed, and drive away. The software didn't care who you were. The car didn't check your credentials. If it was broken, a skilled person could fix it. That world is gone. And neither Mate Armstrong versus Ferrari nor Mate Armstrong versus Bugatti is really about one man and his workshop. They are the opening rounds of a fight that is going to find who actually owns a car once money changes hands. The Bugatti legal threat, whether or not it ever materializes into actual Supreme Court proceedings, has already done something important. It has forced the conversation into territory that YouTube comments and forum threads cannot adequately contain. This is now a question for legislators, regulators, and courts. Let's be specific about what legal action at the